So here's this man who marries a very important man, daughter, from New Orleans. And if you were to go to New Orleans, and I can't say this today because I don't know for sure, but there used to be a plaque on the wall of a brick building in New Orleans talking about Randolph's law firm. But since the hurricane came through, I can't vouch for that. But here is a person that is also well educated, well connected. And Randolph's daughter and Isaiah Harney's son, Mary. She undoubtedly was not well because shortly after the marriage, he embarks on a trip to come to Florida to get her into a better clime where she might have better health. They went by wagon train through the States to Ocala. And Ocala used to be the jumping off place because that's the way you could get a riverboat down the Ocklawaha to the St. John's and up the St. John's to Mellonville, and that's the exact route he took. Now here's a gentleman he was a lawyer also. He now found himself with a very ill wife and family members. A lot of family came with him. And he bought a tent, and they lived in a tent during the winter he was down here. In end of January, January the 8th, I think it was, 1870, his wife died. He had a 6-month-old baby and a nephew with him. Here's this man who I don't think ever really did a hard physical day's labor, now had to provide for a family, and he had to do it without any experience, any background. And this is why his articles about these things, I think, are so important, because he knew what he was talking about. He had just gone through this. And let me read a little bit what he says about his experience down here in the early days. He said, on January the 8th, 1870, the wife God gave me and took from me had left a babe of 8 months to my experience in those raw wilds. With a forlorn and broken heart, he stood by her grave on lonely Gatton Hill, overlooking Lake Gem Mary, and contemplated the chances of successfully rearing his young child in such an environment without the feminine companionship and assistance of his wife. And I quote, "the saddest duty ever assigned to man." As he looked around, the view must have been demoralizing, for all he saw was, and I quote, "yonder a cabin rotted down, a little further another, the rest a savage wilderness, reconquested by nature from the parade ground of old Fort Gatlin to the outer edge of the lake, over which the shrill bugle call of the cowboy watching his herds had succeeded the wild yell of the war whoop." That's what he faced on January the 8th. And so he had to begin a life anew, a life he had no idea of what he's going to encounter or even how to do it. And he worked 7 hard years because he homesteaded the property, and you had to homestead the land and put so many acres in production before you could claim title. And it took him these years. And I may, if I may, read this. This is the end of his years. "I had lived my hermit's life the full 7 years. Episodes of death and change and sorrow had crossed it. And now and again I had been among men, had mixed in the feverish struggle that had seemed to my earlier life essential to existence. The river's beauty and its hardship were like a red book, the book of 7 years' trial and hardships. But in the words of the psalmist, I was coming home bearing my sheaves with me. I could say I had fought the good fight. In all that time, supported less than others in my widowed, penniless condition, I had not faltered to do the work under my hands. I had cooked, washed, stitched for my baby like a housewife, grubbed palmetto, and fought the moral oak to the bitter end. My chief resources have been a bottle of ink and some quires of writing paper. These have been the magician's wand, thanks to the Atlantic Monthly, Lippincott's, and Harper's magazines, and more than all, the great newspaper without a rival in the West and scarcely in the East, the Cincinnati Commercial. And so this is now where he's saying, I've done my hard work, I've got my house built, now I can do the things I really enjoy doing. Well, this is why we read on his articles in the Cincinnati Commercial is boomer literature. He's writing literature to entice others to come down here. He was not alone. Everybody in his right mind in old Orange County was trying to bring somebody down here. It was empty. Consider the population from south of Lake Toapacaliga all the way up to Lake George was Orange County. You needed people. He will say later on what we need is a lot of good young women. Of course, he understood life like most of us. So he started his life with, he had no training, and then he completed that. But when he finished, he turned to what he knew best, how to write.